Welcome in, everybody, to FandomNFL. I'm your QB1, Joe Pisapia. I want to welcome everybody back to the channel. It was a fun weekend at the Fantasy Football Expo. I've got some stories about that. I've got some drafts to recap later in the week. But first, it's all about you here on the channel, as it always is. And shout out to everybody who made this channel the little engine that could over the weekend, because we launched last Tuesday. And if my math is good, today I'm recording this, it's Tuesday, and within a week, not only did we hit 1,000 subscribers, we crushed that. We're already closing in on 1.5, from 0 to 1.5K, with thousands of views on every video. I can only say thank you to everybody out there who is supporting the channel, who is supporting me, and just, I am completely blown away. I thought that Zay Flowers jersey was going to be like a month long of trying to grind things out. Turns out it's a couple days. And why? Because of all of you. Because you've made this your home. You have supported this channel. And this channel is going to be different, because this is about football. It's about fantasy. It's about wagering. It's about the game we love, but it's about you. And this channel is going to be about us working together to have the best NFL experience we possibly can in 2026 and hopefully beyond. So again, just want to shout out everybody over the weekend. I have read every comment. I have seen all of you. You've all been heard. You've all been appreciated. And I just want to keep this ball rolling with some amazing content. And on today's show, we're going to do another one of these different kind of things. Last week, if you missed it, we did a fun show regarding some of the players that, people are saying are going to do this or do that. And we're going to get in a little bit further into maybe they can or maybe they can't break out in 2026. And I talked about why and some of the complications of those situations. So if you want to see the breakout show, whether they are going to break out or if you want to break up with them, go back and watch on demand. I've got some must-have draft guys on my own. That's also on the channel. But on today's show, again, a little different. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about guys that are being heralded as busts already, and whether or not they're being heralded as busts so much and being hyped as busts so much that they're actually starting to become values in drafts. And I want to talk about some of my experiences in recent drafts in recent years with price enforcing on some guys that just fell a little bit too far, where everybody kept saying it can't possibly happen again, or it can't possibly happen this year. And then it does, and start to recognize some of those situations in this year where the collective groupthink might be a little bit wrong. Now, before we get to all of that too, I also want to give a special shout out to Bob Lung and his entire family, because Bob Lung runs an incredible thing called the Fantasy Football Expo. I went there for the first time this past week, landed on Thursday, got to see everybody. I got to hang out with amazing people. And when I say his family, I mean his family. His wife is running the reg desk. His daughter is taking pictures. It's a family affair that Bob's running this event. So shout out to Bob Lung. Incredible job by him to create something for all of us fantasy football lovers to hang out together, to meet each other for the first time. And when you work in this business, a lot of it's virtual. So I got to meet a bunch of people that I've spoken to that I know personally over more than a decade and a half in this business, but some of which I've never been in the same room with, which is crazy. You consider these people not just colleagues, but friends. So to be able to see old friends and make new friends, not virtually, but in person, is pretty great. And I got some slides for you. So if you stick around to the end of the show, what my dad used to do at every event, he had one of those little Kodak machines when he put all the slides in. He'd have to sit there and he'd click through all the slides on the big projector, and you have to watch everything. Now, I'm not going to make it go that long, I promise. But instead, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some fun little pictures from the weekend, from the Hall of Fame, from hanging out with everybody. So stick around for the end of the show to check out the Kodak slide. But of course, incredible not just to meet all of those colleagues and friends and coworkers over the years, but also incredible to meet some of you out there. You know who you are, Fox. You know who you are, E-Rock. You know who you are, Kyle, and so many more, Dev, all of these amazing people and so many more that I have known, that I played in leagues with, that have been a part of my shows for years now. To be able to really sit there, have a beer with you all, talk football, talk life, it was awesome. So shout out to Bob. It's a great event. If you love fantasy football, you should check it out. And speaking of love and ball, tomorrow on the show, we're going to have Mike Dempsey on. Now, Mike is the voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars on the radio, personal friend of mine for many, many moons here, almost 20 years. Man, I'm getting old. But Mike Dempsey's going to join the show tomorrow, and we're going to talk about what the hell is really going on with Travis Hunter. We're going to get his take on what's going on with that wide receiver group, what's going on with that running back room, because this is one of the more interesting fantasy teams where there's so many questions, but so much upside. And I want to get a little bit more insight, and I'm sure you do too. So subscribe to the channel. Again, drop your comments below. You can't win the Zay Flowers jersey. It's gone already. So I'm going to pick somebody this week who's won it. I will send it out there to you guys. We're going to get this work. Again, I didn't think we would get it this fast. So that's pretty cool. So instead, we have to hit a new demarcation. So we're going to try to get to 2,500 subs. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it by tomorrow. And what we'll do is we'll give away a fantasy football black book. I'll send you a digital copy if you want to save trees. And if you just want the old school book like I do, because I'm old and I like to hold the book and read it, well, I'll send you that too. So again, we hit 2,500 subscribers. We'll get you a black book. But in the meantime, if you want to get one yourself, go to Amazon right now. Plus, there's digital cheat sheets that I update that get updated for you, that get sent out when you get on the cheat sheet list. So go check it out on Amazon right now. I think it's number 3 in fantasy sports books right now. So let's get it to number 1. Let's get it back on top. It was the number 1 premiere, and I want to make it number 1 in your hearts as well. And let's go make it number 1 NFL. We did that a couple years ago in all football books. Let's do that. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of the show, though. Let's start talking about some of these players we want to get to. And before we get to the exact players I want to discuss today, I want to remind some people about some NFL stories of why I'm having this conversation in the first place. Because sometimes there's players that come out of nowhere that we're not expecting to be productive, and then we discard them the following year and say they can't do it twice. Sometimes they do. Then there's players that have a great breakout season, and then we get concerned with the possibility of a repeat because it was seemingly too good to be true. And I'm going to take you through a couple of these conversations. The first two I want to talk about are just last year. Last year, if you recall, 2 running backs that were getting faded by the collective fantasy football community. I'm talking about pretty much every analyst that I had on, every show was talking to me how they were fading 2 guys, Travis Etienne and James Cook. James Cook couldn't possibly score all of those touchdowns again. It couldn't possibly happen, right? I mean, that's crazy. To which I said, well, you haven't added any wide receiver help of note. It seems like the offense is going to run the same. Sure, it would be tough to get back to that level, but it feels like James Cook is still pretty much the focal point of this offense outside of Josh Allen. So what did I do? I took him cheap everywhere as my RB1. And some spots, I even got him as an RB2, if you can believe it. And he was incredible. Travis Etienne, 2 years removed from an RB1 season. Last year, or should I say 2 years ago now, injuries kind of befell him. But 3 years ago, he was an RB1. 2 years ago, injuries, kind of a letdown, weird situation. Now, a new coach comes in, and that brings uncertainty. I get it. Liam Cohen came in, and a lot of people looked at that and said, okay, Liam Cohen is here now. Maybe they drafted Bashal Tutin. Maybe this backfield is going to go away from him. Instead of looking at the purpose of, wait a minute, this is a guy who is probably towards the end of his days with the Jaguars, a guy that's a proven entity, a guy that Liam Cohen can use. And instead what happened was his ADP got so suppressed that he became a massive value because everyone said it couldn't work, it couldn't be good. It ended up being pretty damn good last year. If you look at Travis Etienne's stats, he was an RB1. He was spectacular last year. And it's funny because he's kind of going through the same process this year. It's like, well, Alvin Kamara's there. And, well, Kellen Moore doesn't like to throw to the running backs. Well, maybe because he didn't feel good about throwing to the running backs last year. Maybe because Alvin Kamara has lost a step and he's an older player. And that's why we've replaced him in the offense. I'll take you through another couple examples too. I'll go in the Wayback Machine if you want. How about Arian Foster? Now, if you recall, Arian Foster was an undrafted free agent. Came out of nowhere, had a massive season in 2010. He exploded for 1,600 rushing yards that year, 16 touchdowns, 604 receiving yards. That's pretty good. A lot of people said it's not going to repeat, can't possibly happen. This guy came out of nowhere. He's going to be a one-year wonder kind of player. Wasn't the case. The encore season in 2011, 1,224 yards, 10 touchdowns in 13 games. Remember, he was hurt, so he missed some time there. So had he played a full season, he probably would have eclipsed the previous year. So sometimes guys aren't flukes. Keep that in mind. James Cook 2 years ago was not a fluke. It was a slow burn. Didn't happen as quick as we wanted, but it was not a fluke. I'll go back a couple years ago, too. If you recall, it was Josh Jacobs coming off a year when nobody wanted him because he'd been hurt, but 2 years prior, he had been a workhorse. And I remember I was in an expert draft and he kept falling and falling and falling. And what did I do? I waited and he kept falling. And I said, I need running back help. He's going to be my RB2 at this point. I'm going to take him. He ended up having his best season with the Raiders that year before he moved on eventually to the Green Bay Packers. So the lesson learned is not every single guy necessarily that is earmarked for or potentially destined for a fall off or a fade ends up becoming that. Let's talk about the first guy on our list here this year who's being treated that way, and Michael Wilson. Now, Michael Wilson obviously last year had a breakout season. There's no doubt about it. Michael Wilson's bulk of his, I would say, productivity came after the bye, came in periods of time too where, wasn't exactly Marvin Harrison healthy or playing. There was a big opening there. And Michael Wilson stepped into that void. And starting in week 11, started to have massive games. 15 of 18 for 185, 10 of 15 for 118, then 11 for 16 in week 14 for 142 with 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for 11. The amount of targets was incredible. He had a touchdown in every single week from week 14 all the way to week 18. It was a massive run, an incredible run. And I think the mindset is you can't possibly repeat it again. Maybe, maybe not. You see the projections here on the screen. Touchdown 7, targets, down from last year potentially, or maybe somewhere in that similar range. But you're going to see the yardage total looking down to in some of those projections also down from 1,000 yards to 906 yards. And I get that. Repeating last year's flourish might be difficult. There's one thing that's happening though, and if you're paying attention to some of the videos going around in camp, Marvin Harrison is struggling yet again. Now, it's a couple drop balls. I don't want to overreact to it. Marvin Harrison has a lot of talent. Marvin Harrison was a tremendous wide receiver at Ohio State. He hasn't quite gotten to where we wanted him to be in fantasy. Some of it's been injury. Maybe some of it's been play calling. But what I experienced this weekend in the expert drafts is that nobody wants Michael Wilson almost at any price. And I think that might be wrong. Now, the consensus ADP is wide receiver 36. So basically, he's going as a wide receiver 3/4. I'm seeing some real ADP times of where he's going actually in drafts, like the ones that I've experienced, down at 41. So what does that mean? That means if a guy is falling to as your 4th wide receiver, Michael Wilson, coming off a 1,000-yard receiving season, there is a truth that could be told. That maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. never reaches that plateau. Maybe this new coaching staff and Jacoby Brissett, who found a lot of comfort with Michael Wilson last year, could actually repeat these numbers. Maybe, just maybe, this is a report we got to pay attention to, and Michael Wilson had a pretty good college career. And the Arizona Cardinals, when you look at that schedule, are going to be playing from behind. So I think if Michael Wilson falls outside of the top 36 and continues to plummet outside the top 40, which is where he's going now in some of the drafts that I've been in, I think he becomes an intriguing investment. If you're wrong, okay, you're wrong. I wouldn't take him over Ricky Pearsall. I wouldn't take him over Mekhi Lemon, just to give you context to this conversation. I wouldn't take him over Jordan Addison, who is at not 1, but 2 top 21 wide receiver finishes. However, over Josh Downs, maybe. Over Matthew Golden, probably. I'm putting that out there because I want you to understand eventually this ADP might continue to fall and fall and fall. And if it falls far enough past the guys that I mentioned of Addison, Pearsall, and Mekhi Lemon, I think Michael Wilson is interesting. Next on our list is Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers is another guy last year, injury-plagued season. It's unfortunate. It's not what we wanted from Malik Nabers. We wanted a whole lot more. Unfortunately, we did not get it. Now, you see the ADP for him is around wide receiver 15, but in reality, in some of these drafts, what's happening from what I've seen is more wide receiver 18 to 20. Now, he has been quote-unquote cleared. We'll see how that goes. Now, that just because he's cleared to practice does not necessarily mean he's going to play right away. That's something you've got to keep in mind. He could still end up on the PUP list. It's still possible. We don't know what it looks like. And again, this is very early. We're in July still with this conversation. We know the kind of talent Malik Nabers is. We also know sometimes it takes guys a little bit longer to get right. My concern with Malik Nabers is even if he does play earlier than we think, that knee is not quite strong enough to create the separation that Malik Nabers needs to be the fantasy stud that we all want. Where Malik Nabers becomes interesting is when he falls outside of this top 20 range. Past Emeka Egbuka, past Lad McConkey, He becomes very interesting when you start to talk about him and guys like Garrett Wilson, or even guys like Luther Burden, maybe even Jameson Williams. That becomes a more interesting conversation. Now, to me, I prefer him outside the top 25. Depending on how these next couple weeks go, keep a close eye on that, because Malik Nabers could fall eventually into being a value, because people like me are afraid of him and telling you, be careful. Top 20 wide receiver is a big question mark for Malik Nabers. But I do believe that if Malik Nabers falls far enough, he does become a value. For me to have to fall out of that top 25, then I'm starting to consider it. And I would put this caveat on it as well. I would consider Malik Nabers more so in 10 teams leagues when the 10-team league replacement value at wide receiver is easier. Or if you're in a 2 wide receiver league as opposed to a 3 wide receiver start league, taking shots is a little easier. Why? Because the replacement value is potentially easier. So context matters. Okay, context absolutely matters. Next on our list of guys to talk about here, Pittsburgh wide receiver DK Metcalf. Now, this is one I have to say I struggle with a little bit, because I do see a lot of the downside here for DK Metcalf. I get it. I understand that Metcalf is a player at this stage here that people are concerned with, and that people are looking at an aging Aaron Rodgers and saying, is this something that can really get done? Last year, 59 receptions, 850 yards. It wasn't great. He had a couple explosive games. You see some of the projections for this year too, about 908 yards. So kind of looking like a copy and paste season. He is going right now currently somewhere around wide receiver 36 in general ADP. In the real-time ADP that you could see in leagues that's happening right now, DK Metcalf, somewhere around that same range. He's going in that same universe as Jordan Tyson, who's a rookie. He's going in a similar range to guys like Michael Wilson, guys like Mekhi Lemon, Cortland Sutton, Chris Godwin. I feel like Chris Godwin is a better roll of the dice, despite some of his injury concerns. I feel like Mekhi Lemon is a rookie, has a little bit more upside, although a little bit more downside earlier in the season. So keep that in mind as you're building your rosters. Think about that as you take guys. I'm not saying you can't draft DK Metcalf. However, if DK Metcalf starts to fall closer to 50 than 36, which I think is probably not going to happen, I could see him go all the way closer to Michael Pittman at 43. I could see by the time we get into Labor Day action for that last weekend of drafts, that you might see those two Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers basically going back to back. So think about that, consider that, watch that ADP closely. Let's talk about some of the running backs here that some folks are fading. And again, subscribe to the channel if you're watching right now. We're giving away a Fantasy Football Black Book 2026 for somebody who subscribes, drops their comments, likes this video. If you do all those things, you can win a free Black Book when we get to 2,500 subscribers, and that's only 1,000 away. And considering the way we're accumulating subscribers at an alarming rate, I feel pretty good about this. I feel like we can get this done. So if you can't wait, go get your Black Book on Amazon. Otherwise, just try to win it for free by commenting below. Next guy on our list, as we pivot to the running back position, I want to talk to you about TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson, explosive, fun. TreVeyon Henderson is a running back that I'm excited about the future of, not just as a Patriots fan, but as a football fan. When Ramondre Stevenson was out, you got a glimpse or two of what TreVeyon Henderson could be potentially in 2026. The problem is, right now, he's being drafted as RB22. He's being drafted ahead of guys like David Montgomery. And guess what? David Montgomery is boring. But David Montgomery is the back in Houston. I would rather have David Montgomery. So I do think at that ADP, I'm kind of out. If you look at DeAndre Swift being drafted after him, I would rather have Swift. If Henderson should start to slide more, as people keep talking about him as being potentially a bust with Ramondre Stevenson getting into those carries and Ramondre Stevenson getting goal line work, if he starts to fall closer to Ramondre at 30, or even past him into that range of Kyle Monangai at 33, that's when I would start to pounce. So context matters. It matters in everything we do and everything we talk about. It's not just, this guy's a bust, this guy sucks, you can't possibly draft him. That's bad fantasy. TreVeyon Henderson is a very talented player. If Ramondre Stevenson should have any sort of issues again with health, TreVeyon Henderson becomes a fringy RB1 potentially. He's only a sophomore. It's his second season. There's a lot of upside there. So just keep that in mind. TreVeyon Henderson could also potentially be a complete value if he falls further. What I noticed in the real drafts that I did this weekend, he was falling closer to RB 24 as opposed to RB 21, 22. That's only a couple spots, but it's an indicator. It's an indicator they're going to see some of those notches tick down a little bit. So watch the Travion Henderson ADP very closely. At the current ADP, yeah, he could be a bust, but he could become a value if it falls a little bit further as we go into August. Another running back to talk about here is Bucky Irving. Now, Bucky Irving last year, another guy that dealt with injuries. Bucky Irving, we know, had a fantastic season 2 years ago, and Bucky Irving is a player that we want to watch carefully because of his health. He was a guy that had a shoulder issue, and he was a guy that last year I know we were looking for with big expectations. And I get that. Bucky Irving is a player that should be theoretically a top 20 running back. The difference this year is the health. And the other difference this year with Bucky Irving is considering they brought in Kenneth Gainwell, who had a very, very productive season last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, with the Steelers, to me, you saw the best of Kenneth Gainwell. Can he repeat that somewhere else? I think he could. And I think this might be an offense where you've seen multiple backs work before, and that does concern me a little bit about Bucky Irving, couple that with the health. Bucky Irving in general ADP, you can see it on RotoWire. You can see it in a lot of places. Go check out rotowire.com for the ADP. Bucky Irving at 20. What I saw this weekend was Bucky Irving more like RB 23, 24, which is funny because you'll see Quinshon Junkins go. Quinshon Junkins will go. Then you'll see Bucky Irving, Travion Henderson, Bashal Tutin, kind of that grouping of guys where nobody's quite sure, but they're willing to throw darts on the upside. And that is very intriguing. Should Bucky Irving's ADP fall a little bit more? I think he becomes a value. Right now, I'm going to say bust. But a little bit more, maybe 5 spots more, potentially a value depending on how you build your roster. The last guy I want to talk about here before we get to some fun, and we all like fun, stick around for the slideshow. It's going to be a good time from Canton. Matthew Stafford. And you might say, how could the MVP be underrated? Well, last year was a career year. MVP season, 46 touchdowns, 4,700 yards. This year, the projections have him at 4,000 yards, which I get it, realistic. 30 touchdowns. That's 16 less touchdowns. That is 700 less passing yards. I get that. I understand it. He's another year older. He's 38, but not much has changed with the Rams when you think about it. Rams still have Puka Nacua, still have Devontae Adams. Sure, Adams is another year older. They've still got Kyron Williams and Blake Corum for insurance. They went and drafted some more tight end, and they're looking to kind of expand the role of some of the guys they have existing. Okay. But I think when you talk about the ecosystem of a team, and I talk about this in the Fantasy Black Book all the time, when you talk about offensive line, when you talk about offensive coordinator, head coach, play calling, continuity, all of those things match up currently for Matthew Stafford to be a value. Now, in single quarterback leagues, he's basically free, right? In single quarterback leagues, he's kind of the 12th quarterback off the board, sometimes even less. If you're looking at some of the things that I experienced this weekend in the 2 Kings Classic drafts I was at, Matthew Stafford was more like QB 15. Now, if you're playing in Superflex and he's the 15th quarterback off on the board, and you go early with a Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson or maybe a Jamar Chase or even a Justin Jefferson a little later, if you're trying to build your roster with a skill set player first and then you're pivoting to quarterback, Matthew Stafford's value right now is exactly the kind of risk I want to take. Because sure, repeating a career year is tough. But let's not pretend like it's not impossible for him to get to 4,500 yards again. Let's not pretend like it's not impossible for him to get to 35 touchdowns again, because it is. So just to recap right now, Michael Wilson, I think, currently is falling into a place where he is a value more than a bust. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it doesn't have its potential to bust out. It does. But when it falls out of the top 36 wide receivers and you're looking at a wide receiver 4, coupled with what Marvin Harrison is doing, I see potentially that turnaround of us going, you couldn't possibly do it again 2 years in a row. James Cook last year, Travis Etienne last year after coming off an injured season. Couldn't possibly happen. Well, it could. It could happen because Brissett has a rapport with him, and he saw it in spades, and he's not afraid to throw to him a million times. And on top of that, they're going to be playing from behind and throwing the football a ton this year. They're going to be losing a lot of games. Malik Nabers needs to fall further for me. Outside the top 25, he becomes a value. Inside the top 20, I think he's a bust. DK Metcalf, inside the top 36, a bust. If he falls outside of the top 40, I'm intrigued as a wide receiver 4-ish. Travion Henderson, another guy too, just to recap. Currently, I think bust where he's being drafted. If he falls further, another 5, 6, maybe even 7 or 8 spots, it's possible. Watch it closely. He becomes a potential value for the upside he has in an offense. I think they got a lot better over the year of the offseason, bringing in A.J. Brown, bringing in Romeo Doubs. I think they got much better. Bucky Irving, another guy here too, just to bring up once again. Currently, I think a bust. I agree with the consensus. What I saw in this weekend is potential for upside as a value, but watch it carefully. It's got to fall past David Montgomery range. And finally, Matthew Stafford, another guy that I do think has that potential to not repeat last year, but certainly be a guy, if you're in a 14-team league looking for a QB, you're okay. If you're in super flex leagues and you're getting him as the 15th or 16th quarterback off the board, I think it's more than okay. So keep a close eye on that. Now, remember, subscribe to the channel, like this video. Tomorrow, I've got my old pal Mike Dempsey from the Jaguars coming on. We're going to talk about all those circumstances surrounding the Jaguars that all of us don't understand. Parker Washington, Brian Thomas, Bashal Tutin. What's happening with all these guys, and what the hell's happening with Travis Hunter? I hope Mike Dempsey can give us some insights. That's going to be a great program, so check that out. He's also the host of the Football Die Hard Show with my good pal Bob Harris on SiriusXM Fantasy and NFL Network Radio on SiriusXM. He's going to have a lot of incredible insights to share with you, not just about the Jags, but a lot of other pieces here. I just was on the radio with them this past weekend. Actually, was it weekend? No, it was Thursday. God, it was a fun weekend in Canton, if you catch my drift. All right, speaking of Canton, I promise you, if you stayed to the end of the show, you will get a slideshow. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the fun that was had by the gang and some great pictures here at the Hall of Fame. Oh, look, there's my friends, Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson. Look, on brand, Derek Brown with a Monster Energy drink in his hand, which, of course, he had to get rid of. Can't bring in drinks into the Hall of Fame, D-Bro. Come on. You and your Monster Energy drinks. But this was great to experience the Hall of Fame with 3 friends that you work in the football industry with that help write the Fantasy Black Book. If you're looking for Black Book insights, once again, Derek Brown, Andrew Erickson, major contributors to it, writing up the running backs and wide receivers respectively, and me doing the quarterbacks and the tight ends. So go check it out on Amazon. In the meantime, one of my favorite photos right here, us recreating in a magical moment. Back in the day, the Dan Fouts-led Chargers couldn't quite pull it out, but left it all in the field, and you see Kellen Winslow getting carried off. And that was us carrying Derek Brown off. Andrew Erickson obviously looking very studious here with his glasses in this. And again, if you're listening on the podcast, which you can get over at Spreaker, we're getting all the podcasts. I know everybody asked about the pods. They're up there. It's slowly getting integrated to iTunes and other things. It just takes a little while. But if you can't wait, go to Spreaker, find NFL Fandom, or Fandom NFL, I should say. I should know the name of my own channel. Find that out. Fandom NFL. Go check that out. So here we are, carrying Derek Brown off the field. Of course, this is what it's all about, right? Boom, the trophy, the Lombardi trophy. Pretty incredible to be there and to see that. If you love football, go check it out. And also for me personally as an NFL flag coach, they had a whole section of NFL flag. This was really cool too. They had the signed ball from the Texas Fury, who won last year. My daughter's team came within basically a touchdown of going to the Nationals, which was amazing. Hanging out with my friends there on the screens behind us at every location we went to for every event was all the games going on. And to see the growth of NFL flag is tremendous. I was very close. I was a touchdown away from coaching on ESPN, everybody. That would have been pretty cool. Have to get back there next year. We'll see. But the fact that they're starting to open this up and had a great situation there, a great exhibit of the NFL flag going on there, especially for the girls' flag. I got to see my great friend Laquan Jones from NFL Network, full-time researcher at NFL, on-air talent at the fantasy stuff there. Laquan is a brilliant guy, good friend of mine. Jersey boy, baby. Let's go. He's going to be coming on the show. And speaking of coming on the show, some of my other friends too, Chris Allen's coming on the show from Fantasy Life. My friend Marcus Grant from NFL Network and from pretty much everywhere else also coming out there. Marcus, another great example of someone you know for over a decade, you talk to all the time, but he's in LA. I'm in the New Jersey area. We don't get to spend time in person. This was a great thing. You see Derek Brown in the background. You see Rich Rebar in the background. I'm going to see this weekend. I wanted to do some more content from there, but unfortunately, we were all having too much fun and just talking and hanging out. So next weekend is the flex draft that Jake Seeley runs from The Athletic. I'll try to do some content from there, get everybody's picks for you. It'll be an easier environment. Some of these big open environments were a little loud and people were drafting, and getting to do a fantasy football draft. Actually, scratch that, reverse it. I went full Jim Rome there. Getting to do two. God, is that guy still around, by the way? I don't know. Getting to do two fantasy football drafts from Canton, Ohio's Pro Football Hall of Fame was spectacular. It was a great moment. It was great fun to do. It was so spectacular to meet all of you and to watch this channel grow at the NFL Hall of Fame, doing these drafts, watching everybody coming out to support. This is our channel. It's not my channel. It belongs to all of us because we love football. Mike Dempsey interview coming tomorrow. If you want some more Joe Pisapia content, check out the collab that I did too. It's on this channel. Scroll down there. You'll see it under the collab section of the channel there. The lineup guys of fantasy football, Mitch and Mello, tremendous guys. We did a whole hour about draft strategies. I highly encourage you watching. Mitch is a great host, does a tremendous job. Nice enough to have me on the program. Check it out. It's on his channel at Lineup Fantasy Football. It's also on my channel. It's a collab, so go check that out too. Support the guys. Support everybody doing independent football content, because that's the new way of the world, isn't it? So thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you want to win a free fantasy football black book as we get to 2,500 subscribers, go ahead, drop your comments below, subscribe to the channel, like this video. That's all you got to do. And last but not least, thank you, everybody, for hanging out. And I will get that Zay Flowers jersey out this week and announce the winner. I wasn't prepared for it. So I got to get the packaging together. I got to find one of you. You got to email me. I'll probably do that on tomorrow's show. So make sure you watch tomorrow's show to see if you're the winner. There you go. And ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you don't miss a program. That's how you do it, everybody. All right, that'll do it for me. But the story of the game goes on. We'll see you next time, kids. This has been Fandom NFL.